What happens when one of Hollywood's most beloved actors sits down for what should be a routine morning interview only to find himself facing a host determined to destroy his reputation on live television? This is the story of Johnny Depp's explosive confrontation with George Stephanopoulos that ended with security escorting the Pirates of the Caribbean star off the Good Morning America set, leaving millions of viewers stunned and the network scrambling for damage control. Before we dive into this incredible story, make sure to hit that subscribe button and let me know in the comments what you think. Really motivated Stephanopoulos to go after Depp so aggressively. Now, let's get into what really happened behind the scenes of one of morning television's most shocking moments. The morning started like any other at the Good Morning America studios in Times Square. Johnny Depp had arrived early, looking relaxed in his signature dark sunglasses and well-worn leather jacket. He was there to promote his latest independent film, a passion project that had taken him years to bring to the screen. The actor seemed genuinely excited to discuss his work, chatting warmly with crew members and even signing autographs for starring interns. But George Stephanopoulos had other plans entirely. As Depp settled into the interview chair, adjusting his jacket and removing his sunglasses to reveal those familiar dark eyes, he could sense something was off. Stephanopoulos sat across from him, shuffling through papers with an unusual intensity. His jaw set in a way that suggested this wouldn't be the lighthearted promotional chat Depp's publicist had arranged. "Johnny, thanks for joining us this morning," Stephanopoulos began, his voice carrying a subtle edge that immediately put the actor on alert. "Always a pleasure, George. Thanks for having me," Depp replied, his trademark slight smile playing at the corners of his mouth, though his eyes remained watchful. Stephanopoulos wasted no time with pleasantries. "Let's talk about your recent projects, but first, I think our viewers deserve to know about the controversies that have been following you around Hollywood. How do you respond to industry insiders who say you've become difficult to work with?" The question hung in the air like a loaded gun. Depp's smile faded slightly, but he maintained his composure. "Well, George, I think if you're referring to specific incidents, you should probably name them, rather than hiding behind anonymous sources. I've been making films for over 3 decades, and I'm proud of the work I've done with countless professionals who would tell you a very different story." But Stephanopoulos wasn't backing down. If anything, the actor's measured response seemed to embolden him. "I'm talking about reports of chronic lateness, unprofessional behavior on set, and what some crew members have described as erratic conduct. These aren't just rumors, Johnny. These are documented complaints." Depp leaned forward slightly, his voice taking on a steelier quality. "Documented by whom? Because I'd love to see these documents you're referring to." "In my experience, George, when people start throwing around words like documented without providing actual documentation, they're usually trying to dress up gossip as journalism." The tension in the studio was palpable. Now, camera operators glanced nervously at each other, and producers in the control room began whispering urgently. This was clearly not going according to the pre-planned script. Stephanopoulos pressed on relentlessly. "Let's talk about your financial situation. Then, reports suggest you've squandered hundreds of millions of dollars through poor financial management and an extravagant lifestyle. How do you explain that to fans who've supported your career?" Depp's eyes flashed with genuine anger, now, though his voice remained controlled. "My financial affairs are private, and frankly, George, I'm starting to wonder if you invited me here to discuss my film, or to conduct some kind of ambush interview, because this feels a lot more like a hit piece than morning television. I'm asking legitimate questions that our viewers want answered." Stephanopoulos shot back, his own composure starting to crack. "You're a public figure who's made millions from that public, and they have a right to know when that figure appears to be struggling with personal and professional issues." Struggling, Depp's voice rose slightly, and for the first time, viewers could see the famous Depp temper beginning to surface. "I'm sitting here trying to talk about a film I'm passionate about, a story I believe in, and you're trying to turn this into some kind of tabloid interrogation. What exactly is your agenda here, George?" Stephanopoulos leaned back in his chair, a satisfied smirk crossing his face as if he'd been waiting for exactly this reaction. "My agenda is journalism, Johnny. Something Hollywood types sometimes find uncomfortable when they're used to softball interviews and fawning press coverage." The insult was deliberate and unmistakable. Depp sat back in his chair, studying Stephanopoulos with new understanding. This wasn't just an aggressive interview, it was personal. "But why journalism?" Depp repeated slowly, as if tasting the word. "Is that what you call this? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks more like you're trying to manufacture a moment for your highlight reel. Tell me, George, what did I ever do to you personally? Because this feels awfully personal for someone who's supposed to be objective." The question caught Stephanopoulos off guard for just a moment, a flicker of something, perhaps guilt or anger, crossing his features before his media-trained mask slipped back into place. "This isn't personal, Johnny, this is about accountability." But Depp had seen that flicker, and like the skilled performer he knew how to read an audience. even an audience of one sitting across from him with obvious hostility. Accountability, Depp mused, his voice taking on a more theatrical quality now, as if he were delivering lines in one of his films. Interesting word choice. But you know what I find fascinating, George? You talk about accountability, but you won't account for your own motivations here. You won't explain why you're so determined to tear down someone you've never had a real conversation with before today. The control room was in chaos now. Producers were frantically signaling to cut to commercial, but Stephanopoulos seemed determined to see this confrontation through to whatever bitter end he had planned. Stephanopoulos ignored the chaos behind the cameras, his focus laser-sharp on his target. Let's talk about your reputation with female colleagues then. There have been whispers about inappropriate behavior, about creating uncomfortable situations on set. That was the line that shouldn't have been crossed. Depp's entire demeanor shifted in an instant. The playful, slightly amused actor vanished, replaced by someone with genuine steel in his voice. Stop right there, George, right there. You want to play this game? Let's play it properly. You just made an accusation on national television without a shred of evidence, without naming sources, without providing context. That's not journalism. That's character assassination. I said there were whispers, Stephanopoulos replied, but there was less confidence in his voice now. He was beginning to realize he might have pushed too far. Whispers, Depp repeated, standing up from his chair now, his full presence commanding the studio. You know what whispers are, George? They're cowardice, dressed up as information. They're what people use when they don't have facts, and you just use them to imply something about my character that you can't prove and won't stand behind. The studio had gone completely silent, except for the low hum of equipment. Even the camera operators had stopped their subtle movements, transfixed by the drama unfolding before them. Stephanopoulos tried to regain control. Sit down, Johnny. You're making this more dramatic than it needs to be. More dramatic. Depp's voice carried that distinctive mix of incredulity and danger that had made him perfect for playing both heroes. In Villains, you just questioned my integrity, my professionalism, my financial responsibility. And now you're making veiled accusations about my treatment of women, and you think I'm being dramatic by standing up. What exactly did you expect me to do, George? Sit here and smile while you destroy my reputation for your ratings. This is live television, Stephanopoulos said, clearly uncomfortable now, but trying to maintain his authority. We need to keep this professional, Depp laughed, but there was no humor in it. Professional? You want to talk about professional? A professional interviewer does research beyond tabloid headlines. A professional interviewer asks questions designed to inform, not to humiliate. A professional interviewer doesn't ambush guests who came here in good faith. You're being Stephanopoulos shot back, and it was exactly the wrong thing to say. Oversensitive. Depp's voice dropped to a dangerous whisper that somehow carried more weight than if he had shouted. Let me ask you something, George. How would you feel if I invited you somewhere under false pretenses and then spent the entire time questioning your competence, your integrity, and your personal life? How would you feel if I suggested on live television that there were whispers about your behavior without providing a single concrete example? Stephanopoulos shifted uncomfortably in his chair. That's not what this is about, isn't it? Depp moved closer to Stephanopoulos' desk, not threateningly, but with the confidence of someone who had found his footing in the confrontation. Because from where I stand, this looks exactly like that. You brought me here under the pretense of discussing my work, and instead, you've spent the entire time trying to tear me down. Why? What's your endgame here? My endgame is getting answers. 2 questions the public wants answered, Stephanopoulos replied, but his voice lacked conviction. Now the public, Depp gestured toward the cameras, or you, because I'm starting to think this is about you needing a moment. George, you need something to make people forget that you're not the journalist you used to be. You need a viral clip, a confrontation, something to remind people that George Stephanopoulos still matters. The accusation hit its mark. Stephanopoulos' face flushed red, and for the first time in the interview, he looked genuinely rattled. You don't know what you're talking about, don't I? Depp's voice was calm now, almost gentle, which made his words even more cutting. I've been in this business long enough to recognize desperation when I see it, and what I see sitting across from me is someone so desperate for relevance that he's willing to destroy a guest's reputation just to create a moment people will remember. You're out of line, Stephanopoulos snapped, his professional mask finally slipping completely. Am I? Or am I just refusing to be your victim? Depp returned to his chair, but he didn't sit down. Instead, he stood behind it, his hands resting on the back, looking for all the world like he was in complete control of the situation. You know what the real tragedy is here, George? You used to be a real journalist. You used to ask hard questions, because they needed to be asked, not because you needed to create drama. When did you become this person? The question hung in the air like an accusation and a lament combined. Stephanopoulos stared at Depp, and for just a moment there was something vulnerable in his expression, as if the actor had touched on something true and painful. But the moment passed quickly, replaced by renewed aggression. You think you can come in here and lecture me about journalism? You're an actor, Johnny. You play pretend for a living. You don't get to judge what real work looks like. It was another crucial mistake. Depp smiled, and this time there was something genuinely dangerous in that smile. Play pretend, he repeated slowly. You know what, George? You're absolutely right. I do play pretend for a living. But here's the difference between us. When I play a character, everyone knows it's not real. When you play the part of a journalist, you're trying to convince people it's authentic. At least I'm honest about my performances. The studio erupted and barely contained gasps from the crew. Several producers had appeared on the edges of the set now, clearly debating whether to cut the feed or let this historic television moment continue to unfold. Stephanopoulos stood up abruptly, his chair rolling backward. I think we're done here. Are we? Depp asked, his voice dangerously quiet. Because it seems like you had a lot more character assassination planned. Don't let me stop you from finishing your hit piece, George. After all, you've worked so hard to set this up. Security. Stephanopoulos called out, his voice cracking slightly on the word, and that's when Johnny Depp truly lost his temper. Security. Depp's voice rose for the first time, genuine disbelief and fury, finally breaking through his controlled facade. You call security on me? I came here as your guest, George, your invited guest. And when I refuse to let you assassinate my character, on live television, you call security like I'm some kind of threat. The security guards hesitated at the edge of the set, clearly uncomfortable with the situation. This wasn't a deranged fan or an intruder. This was Johnny Depp, and he was making valid points that even they could understand. You're being disruptive, Stephanopoulos said, but his voice was shaky now, his authority crumbling with each word. Disruptive, Depp laughed. And this time there was genuine incredulity in it. I'm being disruptive by defending myself against your baseless accusations. I'm being disruptive by calling out your unprofessional conduct. What exactly did you expect me to do, George? Sit there quietly while you destroyed my reputation for entertainment. This interview is over, Stephanopoulos declared, moving toward the edge of the set. But Depp wasn't finished. Oh no, you don't get to walk away now. You started this. George, you brought me here under false pretenses. You ambushed me with accusations you can't support, and now you want to just walk away when I fight back. That's not how this works. Johnny, please. One of the producers approached cautiously. We need to wrap this up. Depp turned to the producer, his voice softening slightly, but remaining firm. I understand your position, but I won't let this stand. Your host just spent 15 minutes trying to destroy my reputation on live television. And now he wants to run away when I defend myself. Is that really the kind of journalism Good Morning America stands behind? The producer looked helplessly between Depp and Stephanopoulos, clearly out of his depth. This wasn't in any handbook for dealing with on-air disasters. Stephanopoulos, seeing an opportunity to regain control, stepped back toward his desk. You're making a scene, Johnny. This is exactly the kind of behavior that people in the industry have been talking about. That was his final mistake. Depp's eyes blazed with fury. Making a scene. Making a scene. You invite me here. You ambush me with tabloid nonsense. You make veiled accusations about my character, and when I defend myself, I'm making a scene. Let me tell you what making a scene looks like. George Depp walked directly to Stephanopoulos' desk and placed both hands on it, leaning forward until he was eye level with the host. His voice dropped to a whisper that somehow carried to every corner of the studio. Making a scene would be me telling your viewers about the phone calls your producers made to my representatives, begging me to come on this show. Making a scene would be me explaining how you personally called my publicist to assure her this would be a friendly interview about my work. Making a scene would be me revealing that you've been planning this ambush for weeks, probably ever since your ratings started slipping and you needed something to make people pay attention to you again. Stephanopoulos' face went white. You don't know what you're talking about, don't I? Depp straightened up, his voice gaining strength. Making a scene would be me telling everyone watching that this isn't journalism, it's desperation. It's a failed politician turned mediocre television host trying to stay relevant by attacking people who actually create something meaningful. That's enough, Stephanopoulos shouted, his composure completely shattered now. No, George, it's not nearly enough. Depp shot back, his voice matching Stephanopoulos' volume. You want to question my professionalism? Let's talk about yours. You want to discuss accountability? Let's discuss how you've just violated every principle of journalistic ethics on live television. You want to talk about inappropriate behavior? Let's examine how you've treated a guest who came here in good faith. The security guards finally moved forward, but Depp raised his hand to stop them. Don't worry, gentlemen, I'm leaving. But not because I was kicked out, because I refuse to participate in this travesty any longer. He turned back to Stephanopoulos one final time. You know what the saddest part of all this is, George? You had a chance to conduct a real interview today. You could have asked me about my craft, about the stories I'm trying to tell, about the art that's driven my entire career. Instead, you chose to wallow in tabloid garbage because it was easier than doing actual work. That's not journalism, that's just sad. Depp removed his microphone and placed it carefully on Steph's desk. I came here to talk about creativity, about passion, about the thing that's been the center of my life for 30 years. You turned it into a circus. I hope the ratings were worth your integrity. As he walked toward the edge of the set, Depp paused and looked directly into the main camera. To anyone watching who actually cares about the work rather than the gossip, my new film opens in select theaters next month. It's a story about redemption, about finding truth in a world full of people who prefer comfortable lies. Given what just happened here, I think that message is more relevant than ever. He turned back to Stephanopoulos one last time. Goodbye, George. I hope someday you remember what real journalism looks like. The silence that followed Depp's exit was deafening. Stephanopoulos stood frozen behind his desk, his face a mixture of rage and humiliation. The producers scrambled to cut to commercial, but the damage was already done. Millions of viewers had just witnessed one of the most spectacular implosions in morning television history. In the aftermath, as the crew stood in stunned silence and Stephanopoulos stormed off the set without another word, it became clear that this wasn't just an interview gone wrong. It was a masterclass in how personal vendettas and professional desperation could destroy careers and reputations in a matter of minutes. Johnny Depp had walked into that studio as a guest promoting his work. He left as someone who had just delivered one of the most devastating takedowns in television history, exposing not just the failures of tabloid journalism, but the hollow desperation of a host who had forgotten what his job was supposed to be about. And that's the story of how Johnny Depp turned the tables on George Stephanopoulos and walked off the Good Morning America set with his dignity intact, leaving behind a host whose reputation would never fully recover from the confrontation he had so foolishly initiated. What do you think motivated Stephanopoulos to go after Depp so aggressively in the first place? Was it really just about ratings? Or was there something deeper driving his need to tear down one of Hollywood's most iconic actors? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Hit that subscribe button and let me know what other behind-the-scenes Hollywood stories you'd like to hear about.